All right. Yeah. So, Max and Neil and Jiajun and Scott, do you have anything to add to the proposal, or should we just go to the main points and address the feedbacks using this
Yeah,
hour?
yeah. So this text that I wrote, and which is currently commented out,
Mm-hmm.
is just something which we could put like basically just comment in. So this is like just some introduction. And I was thinking, I think we also talked about this yesterday. The first section or the first paragraph, data centers are currently using 1%, blah blah blah, and so on.
Mm-hmm.
If we, I think we discussed yesterday if this is useful or if this like is if we could rephrase it somehow.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just writing this down and just giving like an introduction what sustainability is about and where the focus is of this working group. That our focus is from the sustainability side of things, mostly on the environment, but
Mm-hmm.
also obviously on economy and social and so on. But we will probably collaborate with, for example, user experience and other teams that also like go into certain directions, or FinOps, for example.
Yeah. Yes, I
So
think that is very good points and good directions in general. So this is probably the differences between the way I'm thinking and the proposal you have in mind. So the way I'm thinking is I want to be aligned with the existing standards or mindsets. Basically we gain mindsets by having these commonalities between us. So the ESG is current the mindsets and trying to get into people's way. So you have to environmental, social, and governance. So if you just have the three pillars in your diagram, the economy, the environment, and the social, there are certain overlaps with ESG, but not completely the same. So this is something we have to debate. Should we using our own set of the three pillars, or just should we using the ESG from certain angles? So when we put things together, we do not necessarily to create a unique thing. We actually do refer to the existing um, uh, macro markets, or just so to speak, the macro environments that we are actually trying to make values to.
yeah.
So let's put these things together. So I also have the comments. So see, I think people have access to both the comments as well as the rendered documents. So let's just put the terms here. It's, should we how to reconcile with ESG in general? But in general, go ahead.
So I think I don't know if like ESG. I think there's like in general, it's more or less the same message. I read a few papers who did not mention ESG, so I'm curious. So what is like so there's no standard. So there's no standard, I think, quite yet. So I don't know if we want to follow ESG or some other thing. So
I agree with you, Neil. The ESG is kind of starting from a certain level of high level ideas, but it's coming to the phase that is being well defined. So different organizations or government agencies, they're trying to define ESGs based on that's a principle to make it actionable items so people can follow and to use this in their daily work, especially in the compliance and so financials, they have their obligations, for ESG obligations. They're trying to come up with certain actions that people can use on a daily basis. So in that sense, if you are creating something that deviates from the ESG guiding principles, or just have certain overlap but not so significant, then it comes to the point that people will ask questions. If we already have ESG in our organizations, should we come to CNCF for a second set of opinions? So that's going to be the theme. But on the other hand, if you just understand how ESG works in general, so that's probably one of the fintech people can help us. If you got good ideas how ESGs work in general, and we are going through that same guiding principles, maybe that is going to be more productive for us to get more community involvement and make contributions to other industry.
Yeah, but I'm just reading an article. So ESG is more about the investment, as it seems. So
yeah,
it's more the financial side of things. So
I agree.
Yeah, I mean, sustainability, obviously, this is like a part that we need to invest in and so on, and we need to like also care about the environment and stuff. But I don't know if this is like, if we like have an introduction which already focuses only on the investment side of things. I don't know. I would be more broad in the beginning.
Yeah. So I'm not so expert in the finance industry, and judging probably you have better ideas. So feel free just comment me. So I think the idea is that the financial industry is going to be the driving force to make a lot of things happen. And the investments, when you investments in the right area, things going to change in that area. So I think that as most these are the catalyst and the driver for the ESG to take place in the right direction for the future. So ESG is not limited to financial. That's my point is ESG is not limited to financial. But starting from financial, there's going to be consequences that everybody in the community or in the world will be felt. We will get some benefits as a result. I think this is go beyond my capacity. I would rather defer it to the community discussion, and especially if you have people from representing the financial, the fintech industry, that will be the best way to discuss. Let's keep the comment here and also leave our questions. Let's see. For the first paragraph, you have the data sets. This may not. So Neil have CU. So which part you want to remove?
The entire paragraph, yes. I mean, I don't know if we need to like point out certain numbers, how the predictions are for I don't know, electricity use and so on. If this is needed to state the fact that we need to care about sustainability, maybe, I don't know.
Yeah,
I think it's not needed, but
I see both pro and con for having specific numbers. If that number is out of context or just not accurate enough, that will just weaken our statement. The way I see is that we need some numbers just to emphasize that we are not doing something out of a vacuum. We are addressing the real world use case, and that is very significant for us to take on. But I do agree with you that if you put something that is not validated or without significant scientific evidence, then we probably just go away with that statement. So let's see if we are able to get some credible references to these numbers. And if that's credible numbers also backed by scientific research evidence, then I'm towards the the position that we keep it as using certain formats, but make it more accurate and more concise, so people understand the context, and also without a lot of doubts of the methodology.
Yeah.
Maybe you can also have a look at the link and resources which we had in the first tag proposal. Because what we identified is that many resources are based on exactly one study. And the study is more than 4 to 5 years old.
Okay.
And then there's just some kind of follow-ups to it, which are like, try to prove this or rationalize it. Therefore, we decided also like to put in like in the first sentence, data centers are currently using 1%. I would recommend to say like currently data centers are currently or not most likely, roughly, something which is like a little bit, how to say, you need to give the evidence that the numbers are not very clear. Some numbers are very precise about the electricity usage, some are more rough on it, and then you have also the CO2 impact, which some put into the game and some are not. And there's no 100% clear picture. This is what we take away from the first discussion which we had on this topic. And there's also no 100% clear study which is like try to measure this exactly at the moment.
Yeah. So Max, that is definitely you are speaking my mind as well. When we are just when I read a lot of these reports and from different agencies, different research institutes, they paint the picture more or less in a similar direction, but may not using the same color. And also the projections come off. There's a high mark and low mark. The gap between the two marks are kind of wide. So that's just gives me the impression that as a community, what we can contribute is that either both the methodology, the transparent methodology, as well as the research results. So most people will just read the results on the surface without question the methodology, because most of the methodologies are not transparent or not available for public for reviews. Yep. So this just highlights that as a CNCF community, because we have the code base, the community participants, the research transparency is going to be superior than many of these government-based or research institutes-based studies. So if you are just putting that contrast by putting things, from this is a research result and what they say, we agree with their directional results, but we may not have the access to their methodology. So as a community, we are trying to come up with different proposal, which is very based on transparent methodologies and community contributions. We can make our products more visible and more understandable. Just like the way the AI models are explainable, right? You have AI results, but you do not know how to explain the results. So make things explainable and results available. That's the community-based approach. We can do better than these prior studies.
Yep. I mean, what we also did, we add the link collection in the end of the document, and put there again the source when it was done, from like kind of state who did it. Was it a company? Was it a university? Was it a research institute which got paid for it? Mm-hmm. And what you also checked on was the statement, the general statement, because there's this one very big article from Forbes which states exactly like this number: a data center uses 1% of the global electricity. But if you read down the line, this article, it's actually pinpointing to a university study from, I think, a bachelor or master student from 2018.
Okay.
And the article was from 2021. So maybe it's just an idea to add this in the end, and because this gives also a direction, but also tells like, look, we have we proved it carefully, and we understand in which direction it's going.
I think if we want to shorten this text, I don't know if this is a thing, we could leave this out without any damage, and this could also be an interesting project, I think, because the numbers are relevant, obviously, but I think to state the fact that the topic in general is interesting for the CNCF and for the community, is we don't need the numbers per se, I think.
I have one question here. Sorry for being sick and late.
I hope you're doing better, Scott.
Hey there. Yeah. I don't know what it is. But by the way, it's really good to see you all and hear this discussion. About this one point, is there somewhere else in here? I haven't really I haven't dug in again to this, and I missed the last meeting. So is there somewhere else in here that mentions data centers. And the only reason I'm asking that is I'm trying to think about what Leonard's suggesting, that, you know, perhaps removal of this could be not take away from the rest of the text. And I was just thinking, for me, what stands out is the scope of this group is, you know, largely it's largely, let's say, limited by the scope of the CNCF, you know? So, like, for example, this group isn't going to be studying like green architecture, right? Or things like that. It's going to be studying really, you know, or focusing on, or let's say it's not going to speak for all software, you know, like, so there are other groups to align with, right? Like the Green Software Foundation and a number of others that have wider scopes. And I'm wondering, if we were to remove this, is there somewhere else where we describe the scope and how this relates to cloud native computing?
That's a very good point.
So in terms of a community or another foundation or whatsoever, I haven't found one. I'm thinking about, there was something like the OS Foundation or the Open Data Center Foundation or something like that, which is actually, I think, from Google, the white papered data center and server construction, and an open source server construction or something like this around it. But beside that,
yeah. So perhaps, okay. So this is my comment here is just that perhaps if we don't lead with something that mentions really that refers directly to cloud native computing, then I think we should and actually either way, I think it would make sense to really paint a clear picture of that within the scope section below, or within, you know, the in scope and out of scope section.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And Max, I hear what you're saying. I think I wasn't defining it very well because my brain's a little bit oatmeal right now. But it's I suppose ultimately what I mean is that how do we align with other groups?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it seems to me that the focus here of the tags, working groups or tags, really within CNCF, would do best to really connect where the scope of the CNCF lives within all other foundations.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
And when I say cloud, I just want to be really careful. I don't necessarily mean only data centers, because CNCF was, I mean, the flagship project was Kubernetes, and Kubernetes certainly is run on-prem quite a bit. You know, can be run in air-gapped environments and all that stuff. So it's not just purely cloud. So I think the scope of CNCF is, even though it says cloud native computing, it's not necessarily only things run in data centers. And I just wanted to at least say, hey, can we address that somewhere within the scope section at least? And also, otherwise, I think I agree with what Leonard is saying, that it's not, this isn't really a required statement at the top. And also, I tend to agree with what I heard from Max, that you know, in something like this, you want to say something that has an impact, but you want to be clear. You don't want to use numbers that could be
falsificated or misinterpreted. Yeah.
Yeah. And in fact, it may actually be quite, you know, if you think about the global impact of even cloud native computing, it could be quite a bit higher than 1%. It's just you really have to look at lots of different factors. So those are my few things I wanted to mention to the conversation. Thank you.
So I think
That all makes sense. So I think that the things we like is that we still want to have some references, but the point becomes what kind of source of references we want to use, and how would that relate to the context we are working on at the moment. So until we have a better way to address this, let's keep it as it is right now, and let's make improvements in the next iteration. The community is bigger than we thought, so maybe we can have more input from the communities. They can provide us better numbers. So I will take the notes here, and then let's see how we can just limit the impacts of the damage impacts of this mistake, the old stale numbers.
Yeah, I think so. The focus is on green software, so it's not on green hardware or anything. And from green software, it's specifically on cloud native, so on applications that are getting deployed with the aspects of cloud native applications. So it can scale, it can blah, 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 and so on. So this is the focus. So the interesting thing is, how do we build cloud native software which like decreases the use of hardware, for example, which then at the end is more efficient and so on. So this is so if it gets run on data centers, we don't really care, as Scott already said, it can deploy it anywhere. But to evaluate basically how the software is performing, we need to have like some side on the hardware.
I just want to be clear, Leonard. I actually don't. I'm not necessarily making that statement that we don't really care where it's run. I don't know what we care about. I think we, it's more. I just meant that I would like to note that, like, how do we align with other foundations, and how do we not reinvent the wheel with all the other work that's going on, and so that we should kind of maybe limit our scope.
But I think for this, there's already some foundation work done also by Leonard and Wojciech, and also Laurie Apple have put some stuff into it. And I think in the end we will find out by talking with these guys. Because as we always stated already also in the beginning, it's like, I think in the first step, we are kind of pioneers, not like that we are pioneering, but the pioneers in the military who build bridges across rivers. And open up these ways and find a way to communicate also with the cloud native community. Because when we take a look into the Green Software Foundation, they do a lot of awesome work and everything around the software and defining and SDKs and whatsoever. But it doesn't find the way into the community. And this is like where we can start, like, because we know some people, like Leo, myself, we're a long time in the release team. So from there we can put maybe some ideas to the architecture group and so on. So, and this we can do with all the major projects. I always like to highlight something like an Nginx or an Envoy proxy. If you can enable here and help them to use some some greener way of writing code, multiplied by the billion times the software is downloaded, this little piece of what is running everywhere has already a big impact, for example. And I think this is like the one target which super abstract, because we need to really find it out. But I mean, this is the fun part in it, to find out how to bring this all together.
Yeah. So Max, the message I heard is that there are certain things we can definitely do, and certain people we can talk to. The way in my mind is that not every time when we talk to people, certain things can be done. It's not like they cannot do it. They do not understand the consequences in the first place, and they do not know who are accountable parties that will manage all these things. If you just say you write efficient software, the counter argument would be that the efficient ways of writing software will damage their security performance, things like that. So if you are making certain things available, that's to help them to guideline to going through these steps to improve their softwares over time, they will definitely appreciate our communication and involvement over there. The other side is that the influence we can build up is if as a community, as a CNCF, we have better influence than individually. So if you're just saying we are collaborating with, let's just say, if we are collaborating with Nginx, if you are using the umbrella of CNCF and the context that Nginx is used in CNCF, the message would be more powerful because we are talking about the use case specifically for CNCF projects, not necessarily just limited to the Nginx itself. So this is based on use case, based on user feedback. That conversation could come more naturally than we are just going to talk to people in Nginx. You can do things A, B, and C, then you can achieve certain other things. Because the user-driven and use case-driven dialogue, in my opinion, in my experiences, that is more powerful than just going to have the architectural discussion from the developer side. So I think we still have 20 more minutes. Does it make sense that we can go into the scope and the in-scope and the use case we want to address? So that's probably going to be more like action items for the future.
Yeah, I think it's also the most relevant part.
Right. Okay. So I think let's see. We got a lot of comments on these the goals of the projects we want to work on. So the point that we definitely want to do certain things and we want to do it in the right way. But we want to evaluate what are the major things we want to take on and without losing our capacity. So we are limited, as Neil and Max said, we are still limited in the CNCF and we want to focus on the software side. So not the data center management. So this would be certain things, in our opinion, can happen within this tag. So the software side, as I said, oftentimes is lack of standards and methodology. So that's why people cannot make a quick judgment. This is the best way to make energy efficiency happening within their projects. So once we make the methodology and the standards available, I mean, when I say standards, it's not like it's not like we dictate this is the development process, this is the engineering process. We're saying that by taking certain steps during the development cycle, the things of energy efficiency can potentially be achieved in that approach. And what are the accountabilities you can use in your software development cycles? Whether that is a language you are using or the test cycles you are, the test risks you are taking, that's a TBD. Is by the community contribution. So by using these metrics, hopefully we can help the community to develop more energy efficient software projects. This is the Green Software Foundation has been talked a lot during the proposal discussion. I do see them as a credible partners if we are able to work together with them. The software carbon intensity specification is one of the first in the industry. To my understanding, that the software carbon footprints, this is my personal read. This may not be accurate. The software carbon intensity is not well defined in the scope 1, 2, 3. So, but having the standards within the industry is going to be a lot of it's going to bring a lot of impacts, and alignments with this specification can help us to within the CNCF community will help us to have certain metrics we can use that can also be used outside of the community.
By the methodology to measure the scopes, I personally, I mean, also when the guy from FinOps, Mark, joined us in the last meeting, the thing is, I believe scope 1 and 2 is not easy to measure, but it's measurable.
Right.
Scope 3 is like, I mean, you would need to bring together Intel, HP, or Dell, who then needs to go to their manufacturer,
yes,
who needs to tell how much energy, materials of whatever they need. And for every of this material, again, you need to track it down, like where it was harvested and manufactured and pre-conducted. Also the scope 3 is getting like, this is a rabbit hole of infiniteness, which
Yes.
if you can find a way to solve it, and maybe there would be something like SAP could play a role with the enterprise resource planning system, because
Yes.
they need somehow to track all the materials where they come from. So it's not unrealistic, but scope 3 is like the holy grail of all the whole carbon thing. So
Yeah,
maybe
Max, so
Mhm.
yeah, sorry, I just too quick to jump in. I like your reference to SAP. This is one of the ideas. I think not my idea. It's one of the community's idea that we do something using technology to keep track of the the logistics, the supply chain, so we can help people to build up a scope 3 database, just like SAP does. So this is I think this is probably one of the ideas, using CNCF projects and using CNCF influence to build up something that the community can use, similarly to what SAP does for the supply chain carbon tracking. It's not necessarily say we are going to do something for our software so as scope 3 can be achieved. But I don't think that's the goal. The goal is the using technology. It's not like something say we as a community can address to help the customer to get all the scope 3 estimates. But so if we are developing our software stack can put together, can help the customer to build a reference implementation, as SAP does in this function in terms of functionality, that's going to be very helpful. So maybe the methodology, I think that the way we probably have to fine-tune the language here, the methodology to measure scope 1, 2 can be done, but scope 3 is something we have to say using our technology and the software stack to help the customer for their scope 3 estimates.
Yeah.
Okay.
This makes sense from the wording.
Okay.
That sounds right.
So scope 3, identify areas of focus on performance per watt, power savings, etc. So this is metrics at the end. So which metrics can we use to just, I don't know, tell how sustainable software is, right? So there are like a lot of more metrics than just performance per watt or power savings.
Yeah, scope 3 is getting totally nuts. I have a colleague who's working for the power plant stuff here in Munich, and they have actually written a very nice article, unfortunately in German, about the scopes. And they say for scope 3, they have estimated a couple of €1 million project to clarify for their own delivery chain how heavy is their pollution just through all the materials they get for producing energy. But I think this way it's clearer and it's more realistic.
Okay.
I don't know if this is out of scope, to be honest. I mean, we need to have like some metrics to judge how, I don't know, how we can improve Kubernetes or some other projects or in general the cloud native space. But this is not specific to cloud native, so maybe we should collaborate with others.
Yeah, it's in scope of collaboration.
So yeah, so I would say it's in scope of collaboration, but it's not in scope of doing it on our side. So we would collaborate maybe with universities, maybe with some companies, maybe with the Green Software Foundation, but it's not a project of ours because I don't think we can like achieve it. It's too complicated. It uses too many resources. I mean, we have like so many in-scope things. We should like focus on those which are in our like area, and then maybe also achievable in the near future of 1 or 2 years. Yeah. So this is, I think, yeah.
So this is my understanding that not every proposal, because it's a proposal, is future looking. Not every proposal is perfect, and they need to be revisited from time to time. It's not static. So we try the best we can. If that's something is not able to address the status, the current status, then make revisions. I don't know if that is appropriate to say at this moment because we do not have the proposal approved yet. But the methodology-wise, I think that's going to be the process.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh,
okay. Maybe then I would rephrase it just a little bit to like point out that we want to collaborate on this in-scope task.
Okay.
Collaborate with others.
Yeah, Neil, just feel free to add your comments here. So when we are, the usability of this document is a little bit tricky. If you can just make your comments, and if there's have any follow-ups, we can just follow on these comments.
Yeah.
I mean, you can just write your stuff here in the documents, and we can comment on the sidebar.
1 second. So there's actually also a paper which goes through, which basically summarizes 30 other papers, how they measure and which metrics they use. So we can actually also, I can cite that. Okay.
So as you said, this is the situation becomes so complicated that sometimes we do not have certain things, and sometimes the technologies and metrics are so fragmented. So it makes things harder to do. So the objective is the same, but you have so many implementations, so fragmented communities. So by having a single voice that's going to collaborate with everybody in the community, I mean, ideally we can do that. Hopefully we can do that, and ideally that should be done. If that's going to happen, that's going to resolve a lot of inconsistency and lots of duplicated efforts.
So question here. What I heard not too long ago from Max, just it relates to what I hear right now. What I heard from you, Max, was a focus on the cloud native community as well. Since I just want to tie these two conversations to at least a point that I'm hearing about scope, really. That we're talking about the environmental impacts or the ecological whatever impacts ultimately, or each related ecological or environmental related issues for the CNCF itself as an organization potentially, or that's some of what is under here. Kind of a almost like an environmental conscience for the org. For the CNCF community, this is what I heard from Max. That part is what I heard from Max recently, and I like that. That was mixed in with a number of other things that you said, but so the CNCF community, or basically the cloud native community.
Yeah.
And then and then also perhaps for a resource for the wider. Actually, I don't know. Maybe just those two. I'm not really sure, but I just wanted to note or make sure that we're really. We talked about alignment, but we don't really have an alignment session.
Yes.
That's not really necessarily critical for proposals, but it's part of a lot of other areas of CNCF where tags and working groups where there's a section on alignment, and that kind of helps to go hand in hand in a way with what's in scope and what's out of scope, because you can have alignment with other groups, and that means that you can participate in certain areas of this, especially where it applies to, let's say, cloud native software patterns and what's applicable to our community, but we wouldn't necessarily have to take on that entire job ourselves.
Yeah. Scott, I think you gave a very good point of the alignment. This actually has been in my mind for a long time. So alignment probably is a better way to describe collaboration, because the collaboration is too high level to me. Alignment is how we are going to have our best interests and best practice put in together.
We could have an alignment section,
Okay.
That might be a place where we could put some of these areas that I think what I was hearing from Leonard. Leonard, do you go by Leo?
You can call me Leo, because Leonard, I mean, in Germany it's pronounced differently. So Leonard is a different name.
Oh,
Leonard.
Leonard would be the right name, but it's too difficult to pronounce, so it's Leo.
I get it. Okay. Thank you. That helps me. That I was just wondering, what should I call you? That sounds good. So yeah, so any of those, but I'll keep in mind that's Leonard or Leo is ideal.
Da Vinci.
Yeah, ideal. Okay, thank you. Sorry. So what I heard from you, or one of the things I heard from you last, is that you like perhaps some of these, you're almost like, whoa, what's in scope? It's, there's a lot of things, right? So perhaps some of those things might not actually ideally be part of our scope. If we had an alignment section to help, we might be able to move I'm not sure, certain things there. And it could be, I think that might tie together somehow. I mean, we could see how it looks, but tie together what Human was, I think, trying to get at about, like, these are areas where we can collaborate with other organizations and other initiatives. And it's still within our scope to do that, but it's not our job to take on that entire project or complete that project.
Yeah. So one of the things, this is again back to the formats of CNCF proposals and how we can do things in a realistic world. So the proposal, in my understanding, is a future forward-looking and future-proof documents that we want to address the best we can with the limited visibility. The alignments is more like a actionable stuff that we immediately can consume as a community member. So the differences, and it's up to the CNCF community as well. So the differences need to be reconciled at a certain stage. The alignments, because I'm a developer, I really want to get my hands on doing certain stuff very quickly, very soon. So if we can create certain alignments one way or the other, either on the documents, the proposal documents, or as a separate supplement to the proposal. So when we read the proposal, the in-scope and out-scope, we can also have these solid actions to take as the next step. That's what, as a developer, for me, that would be a very straightforward way to reading both documents. So I don't know what's the best format to put together. Because what we are putting on the proposal, it's going to be used by other tags that's going to be formed in the future as the blueprints for their actions. So if you are putting too many details or just too much stuff, I'm afraid that's going to create a burden for them. But if you are not creating this stuff, as a community member, when we are reading this, we want to get a clue of what as a community, because sustainability is not a project of its own. It's really a collaboration and alignment in general, lots of areas. So if you are creating these alignments section or documents, that's going to be very productive.
Yeah. So a few weeks ago, I created like a small diagram to basically put like organization and everything into like a visual diagram. Where maybe I can share my screen just for a second. Sure. It's currently not filled out. Wait, allow. Can you see my screen? I have to share my entire screen.
Yeah, let's see it.
So I was thinking of, can you see it?
Yeah, the tech radar.
Yeah, it's a radar. Exactly. So no, I was thinking, so if we have like partnerships, so basically very close collaboration at the end, that it's like maybe like Green Software Foundation would be in this scope. and then there's like collaboration that we maybe from time to time work together on a project, but there's no real like bonding or something. And then there's orientation, so maybe like some, like, I don't know, some organizations like which focus maybe on something a bit different, but are still in the sustainability scope.
Okay.
So just basically, I was thinking about putting them into certain, not corners, but maybe in certain areas, so we get a better overview. So partners in our industry space.
Would you mind maybe zooming in a little bit and moving around? Because I don't know if it's just me, but I couldn't read anything besides the major bold caps. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. So maybe this would help. I mean, at the end, this would be like more or less a project, probably to fill this diagram out. But this was my thinking about alignments or collaboration.
Yeah, so I like these ideas of having certain categories and certain levels of proximity. That's what have a very nice visual way. So now, Neil, I don't know what your major is about, but it seems like you have a good experience on usability. I really like it. Just have a few comments here. So the alignments, in my opinion, because speaking from a developer's perspective, I do not have a full representation of the rest of the community. So if I'm working with certain group, just put my own experience. If I'm working with certain groups within Red Hat or within the open source community, I will just have certain agendas together. For example, this could be the quickest way. For example, the capital projects, I want the alignment is that I want to have the CNCF Kubernetes-based power management, power estimates with the community of the research community, so we can have a project from the research community back to the Kubernetes. So that's the way I think about the alignment between my projects and the two communities. From the other ways, we are putting things like as a high-level operational, collaborational, this kind of thing. It helps for people to identify what their responsibilities and what their roles in this collaboration, but it may not have the clear idea of what they can do to achieve the goal. So it's probably we can use your templates, but we are using it more specifically for certain alignments. For example, if I just align with the Green Software Foundation, let us say our alignments, CNCF alignments with the GSF is that we work on, this is just hypothetically, we work on the carbon intensity index, right? So we align with our standard setting process, so that GSF will have a concrete use case on how to define software's roles and the index role together. So they are not creating something out of vacuum, and we have something to reference. The metrics we are talking about can be referenced as the index, as the specification they are creating. So this probably is more like the alignments of interest and alignments of goals by two different organizations. I don't know if that is a perfect example, but that's just puts things into action. So when people are from different sides of the aisle, when they communicate, they know what their achievable goals.
Yeah. I mean, maybe what we can also do is that we just basically leave it more or less like this, like have everything in scope, and then have a project which identifies which in-scope item do we need to do on our own. Maybe community things, for example, there's nobody else. But for different in-scope tasks, there might be some collaboration or partnership or orientation organizations that we can sync up and build basically together knowledge and share knowledge and stuff.
Yeah, so maybe Neil, based on our conversation, you can put something along this line, the last one, in scope, the collaboration. So maybe you can provide descriptive language over there, describe what's the engagement process and what's the the goals, putting the your radar diagram into language here. So that is one of the stepping stone we can use to achieve a
Mhm,
certain to have some productive result. Because collaboration sometimes can go nowhere without well-defined processes and alignments and goals. So if you're making that that's in scope item more concrete, then maybe some of
Yep.
your radar, your visual
will-
radar can be
I will
more
upload tons of images.
not to overburden the community. This is still because we are using the templates you started by tech security. So let's keep the legacy over here and see what would be the future directions for the tech. But this proposal is not one thing, and we still have lots of follow-ups to how to make things happen. So this is, we have come up with a radar in the first meeting. You may have some other proposals to improve the usability of the discussion in the follow-up meetings. But if you can just make quickly into the consolidate on the methodologies and using the high usable processes for the follow-up meetings, that's going to be very productive in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah, I think in general some visualizations are quite good to quickly discuss also complicated topics.
I want to plus one that maybe there could be, just in terms of work products, that could be very helpful. Yeah, it's you and whoever else wants to work on those too. Just having people that can iterate on visuals that could help communicate.
Yeah,
those are great. That sounds great.
Scott, you guys are rival in artistics.
Yeah, I do have an art background, but mainly my art's like collaborative social projects. So they may have design elements that I've done design exhibitions like years ago, but I'm not I haven't really focused on this for quite a while, so I'd rather work with someone who has.
You can pick it up for the new projects.
Sure. I would love to, at this point for me, I would love to, but I would love to collaborate with folks like Leo and others who have a driving interest in doing this now. I think, in order for us all to be most effective, not just in this group, but otherwise, we should really focus on the things that the areas that we feel passionately about. It's a gift. Right. It's a gift to feel passionate about anything in this world. So,
yeah, I totally agree. The passion is definitely one of the critical ingredients we need. Yeah. Because not everybody can do it on a full-time basis or just devote their part-times to the projects without passion. That's one of the most important things we can achieve a certain results.
Real quick, in terms of maybe I should just add a few.
Go ahead.
Oh, are we over time?
That's fine. Unless you have any other things to do, I can still have another 10 minutes.
Well, I don't want to bring us over time. I guess I was just wondering if it would be good to add just an explicit note somewhere about that we want to, that we really, that part of the scope of this is that we really specifically want to serve cloud native users, the cloud native, we mentioned community a number of times, but we don't really define what we mean by community. And I think maybe, Leo, this is sort of where a diagram might come in handy. You've got the different groups that you're a part of, right? There are a number of psychology diagrams around this, but for us, it would be more like scope. It could be kind of like, the cloud, the CNCF Foundation itself, or sorry, the CNCF itself as an organization, the cloud native community, and then the world, and we can kind of see,
So Scott, I love that very lofty goals. The idea is that because we still operate within the CNCF, so going beyond that is a TBD or question mark. But we do have a community outreach. That section. Hopefully, this we can embed your passion and your influence into the community outreach scope. That is one of the scope you want to have. So let's just say if you have meetup, right? You probably want to have meetup in high schools. So they will have a good ideas of what the technology can change and can do and to shape up the future world. So that's going to be a very influential impact for the community.
Yeah. Also, something which probably we can discuss tomorrow is that right now everything is kind of around improving efficiency and so on. But so there's like the idea of 6 R's, which stands for reduce, recover, reuse, remanufacture, recycle, and redesign. And I think there's like some views from which we don't have right now in our proposal. So we can also come back to some other like methods to improve sustainability by, for example, recycle software. What does it mean? Is it possible? And so on. So maybe we can also revisit this.
Yeah. So I don't know if that is appropriate to discuss, but many of the software projects become zombies once the maintenance are left. So when you say recycle, certain things can happen but at the end of the day, all softwares are designed and developed and maintained by humans. So when people left, then this becomes a big question: how the software can be recycled, just reused. So, but on the other perspective, when we are seeing things happening in the community collaborative way, so not everybody is a single human in this community. They're supported by the community and by others. So the more collaboration we have, the more the supported projects around this, then the better chance this can survive for a long run.
Yeah, maybe I will add a comment and propose this as a project that we investigate. What does it like? How could recycle cloud native software look like in our space? How could this and that look like? So maybe this would be an interesting project.
Yeah, maybe you can use it in the better terms, like say improve the user, the survivability of a project. And when you say recycle, means something is already bad.
I do like that. I do like that, by the way. What can we draw from that? It's also a nice hook for folks that only know about the 3 R's, design is interesting here too, because one big element, I know there's a link to the cloud native definition, as CNCF has the multilingual, very short cloud native definition, or the definition of cloud nativity. But we don't in here, I don't think, at least as I was trying to read through it and search for this, we don't really mention the impacts of cloud native patterns, because it's, I had heard, well, Max left, but just what it was, Max was focusing, I believe, for quite a while on software itself, the actual perhaps impact of even languages and software and so on. I think what's perhaps even more relevant to cloud native is the patterns themselves, where software, at least from that point of view, could be swappable, potentially, and it's really those patterns that are defined, like the resiliency, the self-healing, the et cetera, that are defined in that cloud native definition. Yeah. There's also a really good book on cloud native patterns that was written by Cornelia Davis, who's now at AWS, or sorry, now at Amazon. Who, there's also, anyway, there's a big focus, I guess, of what I mean is that the focus of CNCF and the CNCF community is largely, yes, it's on open source software, reusable software, but it's also on methodologies and patterns. And so it's kind of like, how can we help? How can we make clear in this that we want to focus there too on really what the environmental impact is, and perhaps anything related to ecology, our natural ecosystems for the patterns that we are putting forward, you know?
Yeah, I really like the statement that you made as to how the CNCF community and also potentially the TOC to make educated directions of what should be the community be really looking in the future in terms of the sustainability. The other note is that because I still position the tag as a supporting role, not like a dominating role for the CNCF. So we are not trying to decide the fates, the directions. We are just help them to redefine and rescope their projects goals so they can be more sustainable. But putting that perspective, so what's our values and what our actions when we engage with CNCF and the community and other projects. So that's going to be TBD. But as Scott, you have been working as a chair for the the CNCF tag for a long time. You definitely have more ideas. What's the best way to get engaged and to help the community? So
well, I mean, I can just give my perspective. I don't know, however useful or better it is, or it's useful or not useful, maybe it would be good to use wording something like, this tag can contribute to the ecological and environmental perspectives to the various conversations and ideas put forward by CNCF.
Yeah, I think that's a fair chance. So we actually frame the question in terms of sustainability. So that's provide another angle to when we CNCF look at things. I think that is very productive as well.
Do we have a place that you all can think of where that's written in a way?
So Nikki suggested yesterday on the so for the CNCF operation. Let's see, where's Nikki's comments yesterday?
Also, by the way, I'm going to have to drop in a few moments.
Me too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So you want to see a deliverable to the TOC. So you see the very last one, suggestion for improvements for CNCF internal process on education and sustainability. So that was basically Nikki's suggestion. I think it's probably more or less in line with your idea, Scott. So for CNCF to use, this is not quite like as sharply defined as you are thinking, but it covers certain aspects.
I agree. Yeah. So that's like, yeah, exactly. The operations of CNCF itself, the ideas put forward by CNCF,
right?
That can include, the other things, like how do I do X? Like what's the best way to do Y? Whatever, right? So the ideas put forward that folks will emulate, and I guess like the general participation with conversation software methodologies, patterns, etc., that the wider community is contributing and using.
Yeah, I love that.
So,
right.
Yeah, because there are statements, let's say, that are made by CNCF. There are statements made, let's say, by a specific project, but it doesn't represent all of CNCF. There are projects that only CNCF runs, like, for example, KubeCon, and that might, I think that's part of what Nikki was mentioning. Like, that's it's not cloud, like how we fly planes to KubeCon or do whatever it's not cloud native, but it is actually a project of CNCF, and it's worth considering. Oh, well, maybe we can pick a convention center that is is green. You know what I mean? Things like that. So that
there you go. Yeah.
So I think it's like the operations by CNCF. I just don't know quite where to put it, to be honest. Within the scheme of this, like I was thinking, maybe that's the thing that Leonard could help visualize.
I commented, maybe this goes into a similar direction. I had a comment today
Okay.
about investigating how sustainability practices from other disciplines can be translated into a cloud-native software context. So maybe this goes in a similar direction that there's like already folks thinking about how does the supply chain in general look like, thinking about sustainability and so on, and how basically reading those papers and so on, how we can translate some of those findings into our thinking. And at the end, maybe this goes also into a similar direction, that obviously developing software also requires energy, and we need to, I don't know, visit each other from time to time, even if everybody is very remote. There are these these conferences and so on. So if we also put this in the equation, I think we can look at other places which already, again, like some sort of collaboration, but I think more of like a translation into the software space, because all the other industries are focusing on real things. They're building, I don't know, chips or whatever, and we are building software. So we need to do like some sort of a translation into the digital world. So I propose this as a project. I'm most interested into this project by the way.
So sorry, I have to cut you short, Neil. I have to run. But it's very discussion, and I'm going to upload the video after the meeting, so people can just take a look at what we have discussed. Thank you for your participation, Neil, Scott, and Jiajun. Have a good time, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Okay, thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye, all.
Bye.